Hi, my name is Dan Putnam and I'm at the University of California at Davis, and we're going to talk today about hay sampling for forage quality and for low-level presence of a genetically modified trait. And we're going to talk about the principles of sampling for both of those purposes. So the first step to take in the sampling of a hay stack is to identify the stack and to determine that it's from the same field, the same cutting, the same year. If you mix different stacks in different fields, you run the risk of having a sampling method that will not be accurate for either forage quality or for other purposes, including GM testing. So this stack here was from one field from this early part of this year, and this is an alfalfa hay stack. We're in the barn here at UC Davis. And so the first step that you would take is to identify that stack. This is from field 25, harvested in May of 2015. The second step is to understand that the access to the haystack. Now, it's quite obvious that you cannot access all of the bales in this haystack. You're going to only be able to access a certain number of them. And for example, here's a set of bales that we might be able to access. And over here, there's some bales that we may be able to access as well. And so you need to be able to walk around the stack to the furthest extent as possible and to sample as many bales as is feasible. It's desirable to sample all of the bales, but that is not practical. So we recommend with small bales like this to sample at least the 20 bales. With large bales, also 20 bales, unless there's a problem with access. And then we recommend sampling the ones that you have access to multiple times to make up for the number of cores that are required. So in terms of sampling, we would not sample into the tops or the sides of the bales because the stems are oriented towards that level. We want to have a sampling to the butt ends of the bales so that the stems are oriented in a sideways fashion to the implement, which is then inserted into the bale. So only into the butt ends of the bale, typically between about 2 or 3 inches away, so in the center portion of the bale, not towards the top and not towards the bottom, but towards the middle of each bale. And so we'll demonstrate that here in a moment. Okay, so one of the things we would never recommend is to take a grab sample from this bale, because a grab sample is very likely not to represent the leaf-stem ratio in the entire mass of hay. In fact, we've done experiments with this where the quality really is much lower in a grab sample because you're losing leaves, and so we would never recommend taking a grab sample as a representative of either a single bale or a hay mass. Now, it's important not to deliberately avoid or choose bales that, you should always choose them randomly. For example, walk in here, a number of steps, just choose a random bale. Now, if you see one that you don't like, unless you want to throw that out of the haystack, you should go ahead and sample it, because if you take 20 cores, it won't make any difference anyway. The whole principle behind it is you want to represent all of the variation that's in this stack, both in the leaf stem ratio and also some of the bale to bale variation that's in the haystack. Okay, we've observed that in sampling of hay bales, both big bales and small bales, that there are very large differences even if you move that probe over 6 to 8 inches or 12 inches apart. In the same bale, you're going to see some differences between those probes. You'll see a little bit larger differences when looking from bale to bale, but the big issue there is the leaf-stem ratio, because each probe will take a unique set of leaves and stems. And if you go 12 to 14 inches in, and it's at one location and sample at least 20 bales, you should be able to represent the leaf-stem ratio of the haystack in most cases. So large bales represent somewhat of a bigger challenge for hay testing. Again, the same principles hold. We do not want to go into the sides of these bales. We want to try to go into the butt ends. This is a small grain mix here, and you would want to go around here and only find the butt ends of these bales to be able to probe them for forage quality. And so the same principles hold to try to find as many bales as possible. Again, the number of samples is probably much more important than whether you sample every single bale. We see as much variation in alfalfa hay between 6 or 10 inches away from the probe as we do from bale to bale. There is quite a bit of difference, particularly in alfalfa hay, in leaf stem ratio between individual cores.